Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Ini Fokus minggu depan dan saya Irfan Faruqi. Untuk waktu ini kita berikan tumpuan kepada dua krisis yang sedang berlaku. Di timur kita ada krisis politik di Korea Selatan dan di Asia Barat kita ada krisis konflik di Syria. Dan sebelum itu, kita berikan tumpuan dahulu apa yang berlaku di Semenanjung Korea. Yang mana antara lain usul untuk memecat Presiden Korea Selatan Yoon Suk Yeol selepas cubaannya untuk menguatkuasakan undang-undang tentera ditolak pada Sabtu kerana tidak cukup quorum, lapor agensi berita Yonhap. Usul itu kurang 5 undi untuk mencukupi quorum ditetapkan selepas kesemua 192 wakil rakyat pembangkang dan 3 ahli parlimen parti pemerintah Parti Kuasa Rakyat PPP mengundi. Usul untuk mendakwa Suk Yeol dilihat gagal selepas ahli parlimen daripada parti pemerintah memboikot sesi pengundian meskipun protes besar-besaran berlangsung di luar Parlimen Korea Selatan pada Sabtu. Parti pembangkang yang menguasai 192 kerusi daripada 300 kerusi di Parlimen memfailkan usul pemecatan terbabit yang memerlukan 200 undi diluluskan dan dibawa ke undian pada Sabtu. Suk Yeol mengejutkan Korea Selatan dan masyarakat antarabangsa pada Selasa lalu dengan mengumumkan pelaksanaan undang-undang tentera, menggantung pemerintahan awam dan menghantar tentera ke Parlimen. Bagaimanapun beliau terpaksa menarik balik arahan berkenaan selepas ahli parlimen membatalkan perintah itu. Presiden Korea Selatan Yoon Suk Yeol didakwa telah mengarahkan penahanan ahli politik terkemuka daripada parti pemerintah dan pembangkang utama selepas mengisytiharkan undang-undang tentera awal minggu ini. Menurut seorang pegawai risikan kanan pada Jumaat, agensi berita Yonhap memaklumkan bahawa timbalan pengarah pertama Perkhidmatan Risikan Kebangsaan NIS Hong Jang-won membuat kenyataan itu dalam pertemuannya dengan pengerusi jawatan kuasa risikan Shin Sumbung di Parlimen. Kenyataan itu didedahkan wakil pembangkang utama dari Parti Demokratik Kim Byung-ki. Hong mendakwa Yoon membuat panggilan telefon lewat Selasa malam dan memberinya arahan untuk mengambil peluang ini, menahan mereka semua dan menyingkirkan mereka. Beliau juga telah menghubungi Komander Risik Balas Yo In-hyung untuk menyampaikan arahan berkenaan. Hong berkata beliau telah menyerahkan surat peletakan jawatan selepas dimaklumkan pengarah NIS Cho Tae-yong bahawa Yoon telah mengarahkannya untuk dipecat pada Khamis, namun surat itu ditolak Cho pada pagi berikutnya. Sementara itu, Cho menafikan menerima arahan langsung daripada Yoon berkaitan penahanan ahli politik dan menyatakan tiada perbincangan tentang pemecatan Hong daripada pihak Presiden maupun pejabat Presiden. Untuk mengulas lebih lanjut berkenaan dengan situasi di Korea Selatan, izinkan saya meneruskan fokus minggu depan dalam bahasa Inggeris as we have commentator from South Korea, Jong Hwang, joining us this evening. Jong, what we know, what's happening now in the Republic of Korea, South Korea, is for the past 1 week, there's an attempt by the president to declare and announce a martial law, but then only short-lived for 6 hours before it's being retracted. And then yesterday, the attempt to impeach the president failed. And today, there is a joint statement by the leader of PPP and the Prime Minister that the President won't be a part of the administration until he leaves office. Maybe you can shed light what's been happening for the past few weeks, past week, before we focus on what might happen next week, John.
Yeah, basically a lot has happened. Basically, the martial law, as you mentioned, lasted only 6 hours. I think that probably sets the world record, historical record, as the shortest martial law ever. Although in the beginning, it was a fairly serious manner when the TV stations were showing the live feeds from the National Assembly where, the troops were actually moving in with helicopters, with armored personnel vehicles. I mean, I literally thought that, oh, shoot, are we going to see tanks on streets of Seoul in the morning? Because this was happening around 11, 12 at night. Of course, the National Assembly, there was a huge conflict, huge struggle to get the vote to overturn the martial law took place. And basically, martial law was overturned 2.5 hours after the announcement. So that's why it set the record for the shortest martial law ever. But during those 2.5 hours, it was a fairly tense situation. And I think one thing to take away is that democracy in South Korea has matured enough that from the get-go, the martial law had a zero chance of succeeding. the troops themselves, the policemen themselves, knew that they were carrying out illegal orders. So they're kind of sleepwalking through their orders. That's why there was no huge armed conflict. Thank God, there was no casualty reported during that fateful night at the National Assembly. So basically, President Yoon has sealed his own fate by declaring martial law, which, except for him and his few advisors, everybody will say that in today's democracy, in today's South Korea, it's not possible. Troops themselves will not carry out such illegal orders. So now the drama is purely political and big demonstrations. Basically now, again, after 8 years after we impeached President Park Geun-hye back in 2016, we are now trying to impeach President Yoon. Now, the one big roadblock is that the opposition parties in the National Assembly do not have the votes to actually outright impeach President Yoon. They actually need 8 votes to defect from the ruling party. But the problem is that the ruling party, although they've openly admit that President Yoon did something extremely wrong and totally crazy, basically, they still have kind of a big psychological trauma from 2016. So they're very reluctant to go along with this impeachment idea. So as you mentioned, the prime minister and the leader of the ruling party came out and basically said, we'll figure something out. But this something out is totally not something that is written in the constitution. Either President Yoon has to step down himself or he needs to be impeached. This, whatever arrangement that prime minister and the leader of the ruling party is coming up with is totally counter to what the constitution contemplates. And just, they're basically making things up in order to stay in power and not lose face. And basically, I expect the opposition parties to will, again, apply pressure on the ruling party so that enough votes will defect. I expect these huge rallies, just like we saw back in 2016, to start again. Tens and thousands of people will be gathering together either in the center of the city or near the National Assembly. And I think the ruling party will increasingly feel more and more political pressure. So I think it's a matter of time before we see President Yoon getting impeached.
Before we go deeper on the political side, I just want to understand more about the impeachment history, impeaching a president in the Republic of Korea history. Can you shed more light? Because the last time South Korea impeached a president is during Park Geun-hye administration, and just for us to understand that, is this something normal to impeach president in South Korea history? And if a president was impeached, is there a very adverse effect to the country as a nation?
So as a historical matter, there have been 3 formal impeachments. First impeachment was back in the early 2000s, and it was more of a political drama that didn't have too much popular implications. 2016 was actually kind of a major turning point in South Korean history. At that point, the big issue was that the huge corruption surrounding President Park Geun-hye was revealed, and people were just aghast that this was happening. And this resulted in literally millions of South Koreans hitting the streets and holding huge rallies, applying sufficient political pressure so that enough lawmakers in her political party defected, which meant that impeachment went forward and President Park Geun-hye was impeached and removed and ultimately convicted of various crimes of corruption. But in 2016, I think what we saw was that this is how democracy is actually practiced in South Korea. Not everything is clean. Not everything is, free of corruption. There are various elements of South Korean society that is problematic, but when the problem gets severe enough, South Koreans actually really get together and really show the popular democratic political will, saying that we need to fix this. And impeachment process went forward, and the new president was elected, and life went on. Unfortunately, now we're repeating the same process here in 2024. Now, President Yoon was hit with various allegations of corruption, and which probably contributed to his really, really bad decision. But again, everybody's a little puzzled as to why President Yoon thought it was okay within the normal political grammar to declare martial law. That will actually be kind of a huge psychological study into what his thinking was and why it differs so much from the sort of common sense of 2024 South Koreans. But putting that aside, we do have very recent precedent from 2016. So I think people are more or less well practiced in this process. So as soon as the enough lawmakers from the ruling party defect, basically, they'll eventually succumb to the popular will, because this martial law was hugely unpopular, and their attempt to block this is also hugely unpopular. So I think within the matter of, I cannot say whether days or weeks, but in a fairly short order, I think enough defectors will appear, and the impeachment will probably go on.
Mm-hmm. And as we talk about President Yoon's presidency, for how long will he stay in the president position? We won't know, but at least can you give us maybe your opinion, since he tried to declare martial law, which is failed, and then the parliament is trying to impeach him, which also failed, thanks to some sort of support from his own party. So would you agree if I say that now the presidency of President Yoon entirely depends on the support of the party, and now the party is holding President Yoon by the neck?
Yeah, basically. And the party itself has very little popular support, because President Yoon is incredibly unpopular. Even before the martial law, President Yoon was really, really unpopular, but now that popular support has all but disappeared. So the more the ruling party tries to prop up President Yoon, their own whatever support they have left is going to crater. So I think this process will just not last too long. Ultimately, I think President Yoon's presidency will be remembered in a lot of contradictory terms. He came on as a conservative candidate, as opposed to progressive president we had right before, President Moon Jae-in. And basically, President Yoon's favorite phrases was that, hey, we'll restore liberty, freedom, free markets, and all these conservative agendas. And then by declaring martial law, he tried to destroy whatever democracy and liberal social order that was in South Korea, and he thought that was okay, and which is a huge contradiction by itself. So how we actually evaluate him from both political point of view as well as psychological point of view will be a task that will be left to various historians and sociologists, I suspect.
Right. Thank you so much, Jong Hwang, for joining us this evening as we try to speculate what will be happening next week, especially when we look into President Yoon's presidency and how will South Korea heal from this political drama as we've seen for the past week. Thank you so much again, Jong Hwang. Dan untuk waktu ini kita akan berehat seketika kembali selepas ini untuk kita menyentuh pula berkenaan dengan isu di Syria.